Okay, so hopefully those slides are visible to everybody. So I've just popped that up. Bear with me a second. Yes, so thank you everybody for attending. Hopefully you'll find something worthwhile, or a lot worthwhile, from today's presentation. We'll work through drug and alcohol misuse and obviously the growing problem, how to protect your business. As the slides outlines, my name's Gareth. I've been working within the industry for around 12 years, so sort of fully ingrained into the drug and alcohol testing industry. I've been here a while, so passionate about providing businesses with support and making workplaces safer. What I'm currently involved with is drafting robust drug and alcohol policies. So I do lots and lots of work, so a whole end-to-end service provision with regards to helping companies sort of become more competent when introducing policies, awareness training, and ultimately implementing potential screening programs as well. We offer a range of non-intrusive screening systems, including DrugWhite, which is the police roadside screener. So not only are we involved with workplace testing, we are also involved with police roadside testing as well. So we have a really, really good transferable option called DrugWhite, which you may have seen on police interceptors or similar police programs, which is a great transferable option for the workplace as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that as the slides go along. And as Nat mentioned, if there are any questions throughout today's webinar, please just feel free to pop a question in the chat box, and obviously at the end of the presentation we can work through those questions. So as I mentioned, I'm really, really passionate about this topic in general. Obviously, the core of the business is obviously to supply companies with services and training and obviously products, but ultimately it's also a really, really interesting topic that we work with, and something that it can become quite an emotional topic to work with as well. We get lots and lots of stories from the police forces that we work with. So what I'm going to start with is just a short video which really, really brings home to me why we focus on what we do, and also why we work hard with industry organisations such as Break, road safety charity, and really, really work hard to educate sort of businesses, individuals on why drugs and alcohol misuse in the workplace is such an inherent risk. So I'm just going to play this. It takes about 3 to 4 minutes. So hopefully you'll hear the sound. I just make sure I pop the sound icon on. So hopefully you'll hear this okay. It takes about 3 minutes.
Hello, it's Angie.
If you could know what life had in store, would you read your lines differently without the pain? 'Cause time.
Hi, is it Raj? Do you mind if we come in?
If you could change just one thing today, would you choose to be someone else, someone good? This time is running out.
Okay, so yeah, quite a hard-hitting video, and as mentioned, we do supply the drug wipe to the police forces, and we have done since introduction of the drug driving law in 2015, when the drug drive law was amended in March 2015, and it allowed a type-approved roadside screener to be used at the roadside. We don't see any evidence that the issue is coming down. In fact, from this slide that I've just popped up here, as you can see, the issue seems to just be getting worse. So from 2017, as you see there, where there was 11,900 drug driving bans, right up to 2020, when there's close on 20,000, it seems that the issue is almost doubling in terms of drug driving offences. When we're talking to police forces as well, their feedback to us is, yes, it's doubling, it's getting worse and worse, but that is only the tip of the iceberg. Their main sources of concern, or their main bones of concern as well, is that they actually don't have the resources to actually see what the true problem is. They actually have lack of funding to actually run roads policing units to see what the true problem is. They have a control on purchasing as well, which affects how many drug wipe devices they can actually operate at the roadside as well. So they are limited to the amount of screening they can actually do. And another issue that they actually encounter as well, which affects how much testing they can do, is a lack of laboratory space for their confirmation testing in blood as well, which really does impact on the amount of testing and the speed that they can get confirmation testing and done as well. That can take up to 6 to 8 weeks before they actually have an initial screening positive at the roadside, actually replicated, and confirmation testing at the lab. So all of this really has a massive impact on the true scale of the problem. So even though these figures are really alarming and show a really huge problem, the true problem is a lot bigger than it actually seems on this slide here. So I just wanted to sort of show this statistic for you from a police perspective. Moving on to sort of the workplace, and maybe what we experienced during workplace testing during COVID-19. What we were seeing was something which we were quite surprised by. Our thought process during COVID-19 was that we thought issues with drugs and alcohol, obviously with pubs being shut, people being limited or maybe restricted to sourcing of illegal drugs, we thought the problems would have been slightly smaller. However, we were very wrong. What we actually encountered, and based on the statistics I'm showing on in this slide here, all of the issues seem to be drastically rising. So the 5 little bullet points I'm showing here. So there were 7,423 deaths from alcohol misuse in 2020, which obviously was the core of COVID-19, and that was a rise of 20% from 2019. The statistic in the middle there, so parental substance misuse was 66% higher since April 2020 to 2021. What we found, the one on the bottom right there, 44% of cannabis smokers actually increased their usage since the onset of the pandemic. and the one on the left-hand side, 23% of individuals started taking or increased their use of prescription drugs, illegal drugs, and alcohol as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. I have references to all of these if people wanted to access them, so I can happily provide details for all of these facts and figures here. Okay. This was a really interesting one. We do a lot of work also with mental health as well in the workplace, and whether that correlates with people and drug use. This one was actually taken from a company called Mental Health First Aid, and it clearly shows that men by definition seem to have more of a dependency with drugs and alcohol than ladies. What this gave to me was, or what it suggested to me, I wanted to ask questions why. So I actually spoke to the lady from Mental Health First Aid and tried to sort of delve into her knowledge and ask the questions on why this might be. And we started talking about it, and her sort of reasons and rationale behind it was potentially that one of the key things was that maybe men and women deal with their emotional distress in different ways. That could be a reason behind it. Men might use drugs and alcohol as a way of coping. So potentially within the workplace, a lot of men who were working away from home, they were in potentially safety critical roles such as construction or drivers. And because of the nature of the work that they were doing, shift working, they were working away from home. They had a lot of time alone, spent with their own thoughts, work pressures, time critical work. They had a lot of time, or not a lot of time, to consider their own personal well-being. Also being away from home, maybe they had a lot of pressure from maybe partners living at home single-handedly looking after children. So they had to find ways of coping with emotional distress. And obviously, whilst being away from home on their own, they wouldn't have anybody else to talk to. So this chart sort of shows that potentially that's a reason why companies should be looking at ways of educating more on drugs and alcohol in the workplace, and looking at building robust policies and regular sort of drugs and alcohol education for their workforce, and potentially looking at screening programs as a way of randomly ensuring that their workers aren't sort of impaired by drugs and alcohol whilst at work. And another interesting stat at the bottom there, 85% of traffic offences are actually committed by men as well. So I just popped that at the bottom there. But that was a really interesting slide that I picked up recently. Okay, so businesses aren't immune. The stats show that last year, 1 in 8 under 35, so that's your prime recruiting pool, were using cannabis, and 1 in 14 of all employees were too. So it's not a question you obviously need to answer now, but I would sort of be maybe taken away from the presentation that I'm talking about now. Do you know who the drug users are within your workplace? What are you doing to combat the problem? So is there an active policy? Are you educating employees efficiently within your workforce? What I try to set up on my regular email alerts, obviously you can set up Google alerts. I'm quite ingrained into the industry, as I mentioned, so I set up Google alerts for drug driving, drink driving. These ones came into my inbox over the past 6 months, maybe. Some stuff have come in even recent to that, but these ones are some horrific examples of drug drivers, all that were working at the time. So Wayne Wellington, obviously a lorry driver, he took crack cocaine and heroin just hours before falling asleep at the wheel, caused a crash which killed 2 men. He was subsequently jailed. The guy on the right there, a fisherman, high on cocaine, alcohol as well, caused a crash which killed a father, seriously injured his teenage son. And the gentleman in the middle there, Luke Norton, he was jailed for killing parents of 2 girls near Cambridge after falling asleep at the wheel. So 3 horrific incidents of people who were obviously drug driving. Another really interesting thing, and I actually seen this in the news only yesterday as well. The police looked for vehicles with messy dashboards scattered with rubbish. We're by no means suggesting that everybody who has messy dashboards or have vehicles that they don't look after are all drug or alcohol drivers, but it's their workspace. So it might be worth just having a look at if you do have a fleet of vehicles, are they taken care of when people are driving them? Does it remind you of any of your drivers? Messy dashboards, rubbish. Ultimately, if you're presenting your workspace in a good, efficient manner, it's a sign that you care about your workspace. So that was a really interesting thing. And as mentioned, I've seen it on I think it was BBC News yesterday. It's a key thing that the police look for. Messy dashboards and messy vehicles. It might be sort of a sign that the driver has potentially other issues. It's an indicator. So how do you spot the signs? It's all about prevention as far as we're concerned. So what we always recommend to workplaces, this is just some small snippets. So we would always say, engage as often as you can. It makes it easier to notice a change in behavior with your employees. Take time at the start and the end of each of your shifts, even in between shifts if they're coming back for lunch. Engage in conversations with your employees quite regularly with regards to their appearance. Is an employee who normally is really, really well kept suddenly has their appearance changed? Why is that? Why have they suddenly sort of not taken care in their appearance? Again, we're not by any stretch always suggesting it's down to drug or alcohol misuse, but it might be worth having those further conversations just to see if there's further issues that you can help with. Punctuality, again, is an employee who normally is regular on the button, turning up at 7 o'clock in the morning, suddenly late for their shifts. Why is that happening? Why is somebody who is normally on time suddenly started to turn in for work late? Again, it opens up some questions for you to have with that employee. And another really, really good one, minor mistakes as well. Have you had somebody who has had a minor mistake? It's a great opportunity to ask more questions just to get to the root cause of that particular incident. It could be just simply lack of concentration, or that they're potentially just tired. But what it will help you do is to prevent something more serious happening in the future. So again, conversations, it's just great to sort of engage in these employees all the time. I think it's fair to say that most people on this webinar here would be very naive to the effects of illegal drugs. I might be wrong, but that would be my general thought process. I would think most people are quite naive to the effects of illegal drugs. Probably not alcohol, but illegal drugs definitely. Even the drug users themselves, there's so many drugs out there that will affect you in so many different ways. So what we tend to always push with our workplaces that we adopt policies and education programs with is that it's really, really fundamental to a successful drug and alcohol screening program. So in the next slide or the next couple of slides, I'll have a little chat about sort of how we do that, but it really, really is the key part of the process. Okay, so we genuinely feel everybody should be educated from director level, manager level, those driving vehicles in the warehouse, grey fleets of sales guys who are on the road, even those who use their personal car, obviously to and from work, because they could be car sharing, they could be putting other employees at risk as well. And at the bottom there, as I've mentioned before, how many of you can confidently explain the effects of taking drugs and alcohol? The two posters on the right-hand side there, they form part of our educational posters that we offer out to businesses. So they're on PDF. We have an abundance of literature, statistics, posters, flyers that we share with the companies that we work with. So happy to share those with you if you wanted to. Again, pop your details in the chat box or share your details with the organisers, and I'm happy to share those with you. Okay, so we always advise our customers that they have recommendations in place for their employees as well. If there are sort of employees that really genuinely need access, help or support, or they have genuine people with genuine problems, companies should really know where to go for help, support, and there are resources that can be accessed without any huge cost or huge issues or huge problems. So the likes of Frank, Alcoholics Anonymous, the NHS recommended services as well. So this slide just proves that you can access these avenues quite easily. So what do you do now? So as a director or a senior manager or even a transport manager or a logistics or warehouse manager or an engineering manager, you can be considered personally liable for ensuring you do the right thing when it comes to drug and alcohol policy or drug and alcohol screening. Following an incident, the court will consider the actions of the employer and whether reasonable steps were taken to manage the risks. So what you generally need to do is, are you doing enough? How many of you have a drug and alcohol policy? If I was in an open room with you, which was the norm, obviously, before COVID was upon us, I would normally do sort of a straw poll and ask that question, and people's hands would normally go up. So, or stay down, and then we would probably elaborate further and say how many of you educate your employees, and then I would be asking how often, and go on to toolbox talks, and then ask about screening, and we'd talk a little bit further. So it would be a great conversation to have. But generally what I'm trying to suggest here is you need to have these policies and procedures in place, obviously, specifically if you have a safety critical workforce. Okay, so our D.TEC model is a 4-step process, really. So this slide sort of represents the key components. Policy is always the first one, so we would always help with that. So all the businesses that we work with, we can generally help, but most policies will always have something. They will always have a written document of some form, whether it's a handbook or whether it is actually a policy. It can be short, it can be long, it can be detailed, or it can be very brief, but a company generally must have one. If it's a new policy, what we would always recommend to businesses is that it has a consultation window, so employees can engage, they can ask questions, they can come to employers with genuine concerns. That period of consultation is normally as short as 1 month, or it can be as long as 3 months. Normally that depends on the size of the organization. The next step is the educate step. So I've mentioned it in previous slides, but we generally find that companies who have a good educate step and employees understand the policy and the reasons behind it, it helps them buy into the process better. And it's the key component to success as well. So what you might want to be doing during the educate stage is help explain why you're having that policy and why you are implementing a screening process. So we would help with a variety of supporting materials. We would also help with safeguards and supporting mechanisms for employees. You might want to give an explanation of your screening process, why you've chosen it, and why it's best suited to your business model. You might also want to be explaining why it's not acceptable to be using illegal drugs or drinking alcohol to excess whilst at work, and explain the consequences and the potential disciplinary process if employees don't listen. The third step is the deter step. So you've now chosen a screening process. So deter is your actual screening process. So in our opinion, or with the businesses that we tend to work with, a lot of them are quite fast moving. They're quite time critical. So the likes of logistics, passenger transport, engineering, construction. So what matters to them, aside from having a very reliable screening process, they need to have their workers' day-to-day activities disrupted as little as possible. So the ideal is that they have a solution that can be managed as quickly and efficiently as possible. So their on-site screener should be able to be done quickly, efficiently, and as reliably as possible. The fourth step of the process is detect. So the results should be able to be detected reliably and managed in the best way possible as well. So we also help with confirmation drug testing if required. And it also helps with the detect part of the process. If you are getting too many positive results, it helps you sort of say, okay, we've had too many positive results. We need to go one step back or two steps back and revisit the education step. So that's why we have the detection step. So you can revert back to education if required. So what would we perceive as sort of best practice? So there's a whole host of steps really, and this slide sort of gives you an idea of, or if you are looking to choose solutions for screening, then best practice in our opinions, you might want to be looking down the route of something that is credible. So home office type approval is a great tick in the box. So when you're choosing equipment, home office type approval is good because obviously that guarantees reliability and potentially court admissible evidence as well. So capability, you would want to be selecting the right range of drugs and the drugs that people will potentially be using. So as it stands at the moment, the most used drugs in the UK are cannabis, cocaine, amphetamines, methamphetamines, and opiates. So dignity, when we mention dignity, take into account potentially the people that won't trigger a positive result. So there are obviously offensive ways of gathering samples. Urine is obviously a method where you have to ask people to provide quite an offensive sample. We would recommend, if you can find a sample more quickly and efficiently, then you might want to consider that. Efficiency. So as mentioned, you can go down the route of collecting a sample relatively quickly and delivering a result as quickly as possible as well. Portability. A lot of businesses that we work with, or many businesses are required to be screening on site, off site, at the roadside. So you might want to look at a solution that is quite portable. Reliability. So again, referring back to home office approval, make sure you look at a solution that you can trust and you're gathering samples from an area that reduces risk of cross-contamination. Responsibility. When I mention responsibility, there's plenty of companies that will offer the ability to source products, but not every company will supply you with the ability to do policy work, policy consultation, and educational awareness training. So CIPD and IOSH state that organisations shouldn't screen without educating their employees on the dangers of working whilst under the influence of drugs and alcohol. So first educate before you implement screening. So that would be our recommendation, to source a provider that can provide you with an end-to-end service provision. And the last one is just accountability. So pretty much stands up to the previous one. So ideally you would want a full spectrum solution. We look after organizations that have policy development, that need help with policy development, liaison with union reps, help with training programs, and also detailed management information as well. If they have areas that have more positive results, you can pinpoint areas of the business that might need more help than others. Okay, so just a quick indicator of the drug wipe Joule device, which is a saliva and sweat device. So this is just a slide on the drug wipe Joule, which is our core workplace tester. It is a saliva and sweat test. So how it operates is we would gather a small sample of saliva off the forehead, sorry, off the tongue. That's the wrong way around. So saliva is gathered off the tongue. The sort of time scale of detection with saliva is quite short term. So we're looking more at current impairment for saliva testing. This is what the police are doing at the roadside. So the police are testing in saliva at the roadside just to gauge whether that person has taken the drugs very, very recently. So it's more or less about the last 12 hours in detection for saliva. It can be detected just by taking a small sample, 6 wipes of the tongue, and then we have a second blue sampler within the device, which will take a sweat sample, and that comes from the forehead. So we actually wipe across the forehead for our sweat sample. That shows slightly longer term drug use for about the last 24 hours. Combined, it gives you a good detection window, obviously from 0 hours up to about 24 hours, and it delivers a result in about 5 minutes. So it's a great sort of inoffensive, quick, clean detection window, and the method is easy to operate as well. For alcohol testing, we would recommend home office approved devices. How the Draeger devices work are, they're an on-site solution. They're obviously police specification, and it's a 3-step device. So you can actually take your first sample simply by talking towards the device, by saying your name, and it will just pick up a sample of your breath, and it will just indicate whether there's a presence of alcohol or no alcohol, and say clearly on the device alcohol or no alcohol. If it said no alcohol, that would be the end of the process. If it indicated alcohol, you would move on to step 2, where you would pop on a mouthpiece and blow into the mouthpiece gently. If the mouthpiece suggested a reading above 0, then you would wait a further 20 minutes and do a confirmation test with a fresh mouthpiece. And if at the confirmation test it read above your company level, you would then be open to a disciplinary based on that final confirmation test. So it's a 3-step process using the police specification devices within the workplace. So we would have them all calibrated at manufacturer intervals as well, which are every 6 months. I can obviously give you more details on those if needed as well. And these are the devices that the likes of Ocado are using. So this is just a small case study. So Ocado implemented both the Draegers and the drug wipes across their business for all of their drivers, all of their warehouse staff, as well across the CFCs and all of their driver network. So they reviewed the UK drug driving statistics and just felt it was a logical next step, because not because they had a problem, but because they just felt they needed to implement a credible deterrent. They didn't want to do urine testing simply because they felt it was a longer winded process, and not a method they wanted to introduce into the business. And they just find it's a lot easier, a lot more flexible, and they train their driver trainers and all of their supervisors and managers within their multi-sites to do the testing for them randomly and with cause. The final slide I have here is just related to an ebook. So there's a link here on the slides, which I will send out to the organizer, which just gives a little bit of an introduction to our Drug Wipe Dual ebook, and it contains a bit more useful information about our workplace drug screener and other associated services. So there's a bit of information there about sort of the Drug Wipe Dual and some of the other services that D.TEC offer. So I'll pop that out to the organisers within the slide deck as well. So you're more than welcome to have a look at those afterwards. And that is the end of my slides. So I appreciate your time, everybody. Thank you for listening. They're my contact details at the end there. And obviously we can move on to questions if there are any. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gareth. That was excellent. We've got lots of people in the chat box just asking for the link to the posters, which we can send out afterwards to all the participants, and we can also put a link on our IOSH website as well. Yes, so lots of excellent feedback. Thank you very much. One question coming through is basically, ideally, who, Gareth, would companies ask, to carry out this drug testing? Is it line managers? Is it the safety team? Is it the HR department?
Sorry, I put my video on. It can vary. It depends on the structure of the organisation. Obviously, we work with a whole variety of different companies and different industries, so it can differ. So within logistics, for example, we'll have shift managers, shift supervisors. As you mentioned, for construction, we might have regional safety managers that will be doing. We'll be visiting sites periodically, so sometimes companies would rather keep it away from site managers because it's something that they're not so comfortable with site managers who have some allegiance to individuals on site. So they'd rather keep the random testing process away from site managers. So it just depends on the structure of the organisation. So we can have those conversations individually with the company when we start initial discussions with those companies. But yeah, there's always a solution because the process is very easy. It's not something that's invasive. Generally, there's quite a straightforward solution, and each company can generally find a manager or a supervisor of some form to be able to carry out the process.
And just so people are aware, if people like to look at this presentation and thinking, right, this is something that we can implement, it's cost effective, how do you go about that process?
In terms of
just onboarding with a company, yeah, for them from the first initial sort of reaching out to you.
How would we initially onboard? I mean, our first conversation would always be about policy. We tend not to work with companies who obviously don't have a policy. So our question is always around sort of, have you got sort of a policy that allows you to begin any kind of screening program? So we always follow the 4-step process that I mentioned in the presentation. So we'll always make sure that the policy is robust enough to allow companies to actually begin a screening program, because we generally find, as I've mentioned quite frequently, that that's how it works. If companies follow that process and don't miss the educational stage, generally it minimises the amount of positive results that you want to see. So by educating employees effectively, you'll find that the amount of positive results is as low as as low as possible. So yeah, but in terms of an initial conversation, obviously, yeah, we will just have that exploratory conversation first and just see where they're at, and just start from the policy stage first and just follow that through that 4-step process.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Alison Glover asks, how are individuals able to challenge and verify the results of the drug wipe samples? Urine testing allows for verified lab testing and alternate B samples, which wipe sampling doesn't. How do employers cover that?
Exactly the same. So drug wipe is an initial screening. So absolutely right. So drug wipe is your initial screening. What drug wipe is the most reliable and competent screening system available. So we train managers and on-site managers to be doing the initial screenings. If that indicates a negative result, we offer a service where we would have collection technicians to site to do urine testing as a confirmation test, not because we don't trust the reliability of drug wipe, but what you don't have with drug wipe is a quantitative result. So you will see a red line that says, yes, there's a presence of an illegal drug, but what it won't tell you is that it at what level. So we would always do a confirmation test. Again, not because we don't trust it, but because if you want to be doing it, if you want to sort of follow it through to a disciplinary, our best advice would be to have a confirmation test, because that will be that still, as it stands, urine is still the gold standard, but from a cost-effective nature as well. Drug wipe will filter out all of the negative results that you hope to get, and you only spend money on lab-based testing or call-outs if you know you're going to get a positive result. So that would be the best way of explaining it. So yeah, you avoid taking urine unless you absolutely have to.
Yeah, Alison's got back and said, okay, thanks. I thought that would be the case. So thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
So Bill Crocker has basically says, have you any experience in the education sector? I'm not sure whether he's talking about pupils or teachers, but
yeah, into schools, we have. I won't mention names, but yes, we do supply into some schools. Yes, yeah, we do. Yeah, most. Yeah, we do. And yeah, that's mostly to some pupils. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. And Bob Small says, in your survey, are more people found to be positive following the weekend when using recreational drugs?
They can, but what if you with the time windows of our drug wipe, what we are more geared towards is obviously fitness to work. So we're not looking back because of the detection curves that we showed on that slide with the drug wipe dual. There was detection curves for saliva and sweat. So you'll tend to find that with the saliva, it's current impairment, so it's quite short in terms of hours, and then the sweat element of the test is probably about a day or so. So it's not looking back sort of days and weeks. It's more, is that person at work actually fit to work whilst they're at work? It's not looking back days and weeks. So that is the core focus, really. It's more when that person's at work, are they fit to work? So that's the focus, really. So yeah, that's the key.
Lovely, excellent. If anybody's got any more questions, and please feel free to enter the information into the chat box. Like I said, we will definitely get all the poster information across to everybody. Seamus basically says, could sweat sample be a problem if weather was cold?
No, I see the question. Yeah, what we have with our drug white test is we actually have, you don't have to get anybody running around the room or doing a 100-meter sprint before you gather a sweat sample. What you have is you have a small water ampule on each device, so you can pick up on dry sweat metabolites. So that's what we're picking up on. We don't need a wet sweat sample. So yeah, you don't need to get anybody to go for a little jog before you gather this test. So we pick up on dry sweat metabolites. Yeah.
So brilliant. Thank you for that. Lots of excellent feedback coming through. Thank you, Gareth. So
no problem.
And basically, I think if nobody's got any other questions, we'll wrap up. I'd just like to say thank you very much for taking your time with us to talk to us today. Much appreciated, and I think we've all learned a lot. There will be a survey afterwards, which we would really encourage people to fill out to make sure that we are, hitting the right presenters to the right audience, and also ask if you would like to find anything else. There's also some fields in there where you can basically detail if you would like some more information from Gareth in the future. And we will certainly put Gareth's contact details up on our website as well, if you wish to talk to him in the future. So again, thank you very much to everybody. Stay safe. If you want to connect with us, please shout out on social media or get in touch with us via our website or email address. And it would be great to see you at our face-to-face event in the next couple of months in June, and our AGM is in May. But from me, thank you very much. Last word from Gareth.
Yeah, no, thank you everybody for your time. And as Nat said, if anybody does want any help with the literature posters or anything, I think there's some people obviously in the chat box that's requested it, so we'll find a way obviously of having those contact details so I can forward those over. But any other help information, just let me know. My contact details are obviously on the slides. I'll pass those over to IOSH as well for you to have. So thank you everybody for attending.
There we go. So there we go. I'll wrap up. Thank you very much, everybody, and see you soon. Bye now.
Thank you.